Good morning. Let's see who is here on the far screen. Hi. I cannot ignore the war in Ukraine. No, but how to speak about it. Yeah, this is not, I don't feel this is the place to discuss political theories or opinions. Not that they're unimportant, but I don't feel this is the place to discuss that. Well, this is the place to discuss our practice. And surely the war is not separate from our practice. But how to clarify it? How so? Now, when I imagine myself at a distant time, there was a time, I'm not specifying it, and you can put this together in your mind any way you want. In this distant time, living in this place I would have been unaware of what happened on the other side of the globe. That such a time actually existed. Human beings lived in such a time. In fact, human beings lived in a time when they didn't even know there was another side of the globe. But this is not our time. So we are aware, if we choose to, what is, and it's hard to get away from it if you choose not to, what is going on the other side of the globe. And it's not another side. That's the new situation we're in. Because even though we are not the ones who are fighting for their lives right now, it's affecting us. It's affecting us in, I would say, rather impactful but relatively minor ways of how gas prices are going up. But there will be ripple effects that we, I think, will feel over time and maybe for years and decades to come. I think we have sort of default modes of responding to such a problem. One is to ignore it. It's like, it's not my problem. You can see those postures even taken on, American television. It's like, that's not, what are we, these are Ukrainians, like, it's not our problem. So ignore it. Feeling depressed by it. I want to climb under the covers. It's like, when you add this problem, which implies a possible nuclear war and, the destruction of the world, and I don't think that's an exaggeration. You look at the history of the Cuban Missile Crisis, the world came very close to what's called mutually insured destruction. I mean, really much closer than even the actors in the crisis knew, because some officer actually gave the command to launch a nuclear missile from a submarine, and he was stopped. So I want to climb under the covers, in despair, like there's too much to deal with, and it's like, who wants to live in such a world? It's like, what's the point? Okay, when I feel this way, maybe because of my practice, I mean, the feelings can come up in me. I don't have a problem with that. I have a problem with that if I feel compelled that I have to act on them. When I feel this way, I do something kind of by default now, but maybe you don't, and so I want to share it. It's like, it's very important, I think, to come back from your mind into your body and the present moment. It's very important. This isn't ignoring. This is just actually to ground yourself. Like in this situation, to ground yourself in your breathing and feeling the ground under your butt and knees, and smell the incense, hear the cars. Hear the cars. Unless you're Deborah and you're hard of hearing. Okay. Hear the cars. As much as the cars might annoy us, in a situation like this, when you bring yourself back, it's like, I find it interesting. Hearing the cars for me is very soothing. It's like, oh, there are people alive out there. They're going about their business. I feel my own aliveness. My mind might be suicidal. I don't want to live. I have those feelings. And then when I come back into my body and my breath and the smell of the incense and the cars outside, I feel my own aliveness, and I realize my body wants to live. I want to continue witnessing, enjoying this miraculous existence. I want to see colors and feel the sunshine. Yeah, I don't want to throw that away. It's kind of good, I think, healthy to be able to go to that place and renew your own willingness to be alive. Yeah, and then sometimes I think another reaction could be to think about a situation, that is seemingly unsolvable, but yet we feel compelled to think about it. And then we can't really come to any kind of solution. Partly because we are so small and powerless. There's no one person who can effect a solution to a problem of this scale. It's just not possible. And yet, in our minds, we kind of want it. Actually, there's nothing wrong with this desire. We just can't be confused about the discrepancy between our desire and our actual power. Now I have a kind of practice that I want to share with you that I use. I use it sometimes just out of interest, but I also use it to counteract overwhelm. So I sit down, I ground myself as I just described in my breath, in my body, in the earth, in smells. You have to, I think, ultimately you have to find your own way of doing that. Once you're familiar with it, it can happen rather fast, just go to your breath and ground yourself. Go to your feet, ground yourself. Open your eyes, see what's there. Ground yourself in that. Come back. And then, I usually close my eyes and I ask myself, what all are you concerned about right now? So, what comes is, I'm concerned about the war in Ukraine. In that, I feel my own history. I was born in Germany in the middle of the Cold War in 1971. I didn't think this was possible, Okay, I feel that. I feel the fact of it, and how can I say, the emotional charge. But I don't analyze. I don't go into it. It's not like I'm describing a practice. You could analyze and you could get into it, but right now I'm saying I don't do that. I'm just noting it. I just notice this is one of my concerns right now. And then I ask, this is an important question, you will see, I ask, what else? And then I find other things. I find that I'm a father now. This is new. My son is 11 months old. I feel a different kind of responsibility than I felt when I didn't have a child. For my son, for my wife, for how to take care of my family, for his well-being. So I feel that. It's a big thing, but I'm just noting it. That's I say concern, but let's say just an issue or a topic for me right now. I don't even necessarily mean a problem, but yeah, it's a concern. It's something that's important. What else? I feel, and I'm making it personal so that it's real, but it's not about me right now. It's to show a practice. I feel like what it means to be a monk, to wear these robes is something I'm concerned about. And what I want to do with this. Now, most of you are not monks. And but there's something there that I think concerns all of us, actually. The way I understand being a monk is something like to exist outside of the affairs of the world. And it's a double-edged sword, because when you remove yourself or put yourself outside of the affairs of the world, you can afford to take unacceptable points of views. For example, you could practice compassion with Vladimir Putin. You could say, I don't believe that there is evil in the world. I always look at evil as the product of delusion. So I'm going to extend my mind to the question, how is this a form of delusion? Not of evil that needs to be eradicated, but of delusion that needs to be awakened or enlightened, let's say. But this point of view is not commensurable right now with the way the world is going. It would be very difficult to present. But as a monk, you can present it. As a monk, it's like your job is to not hate anything. Okay, so I said double-edged sword. So I think that's something you get from being outside of the affairs of the world. And something you lose kind of is to take a stance, to be an activist for a certain kind of change that you think needs to happen. Now, I'm just contrasting something here. So I said, this is actually when I ask, what is a concern for you right now? This is something I actually find. Now, I think if we look deeply, this may not be on your list, but if you look deeply, actually, it's all of our concern. We're both quietists and activists at the same time. Let me translate that. We are quietists in the sense that we are looking for a wholesomeness in our own life. A wholesomeness that is true for us and that we can also share with the world. And how do you find this wholesomeness? I think the fact that we're assembled here shows that we have that kind of interest. Those of us assembled here, we sit down, and in our sitting down, in our meditation, we are actualizing this wholesomeness that where we don't want to divide ourselves from other, we don't want to divide this from that. Where we find a stability, groundedness, to be resonant with everything. This is actually a capacity we have as human beings. We can be so grounded and so open at the same time that we're willing to resonate with everything. Now, even if we can't, we can discover or we can feel in ourselves the desire or the wish to do so. This is to be like a monk. And at the same time, because we care so much, we want to go and do something. And when you do something, you need to take sides. And this is very contradictory. When you think about it, it's very contradictory. So I find when I go, what else? I find, how do you do that? What else? What else am I concerned about? Like this. Oh, I'm concerned that we live in an age of climate crisis and species extinction. I'm very concerned about that. Everything that comes with it, our lifestyle, the way the economy works, how trapped we are. Very concerned. Now, if you do this practice, you may find lots of things, I'm imagining, people find the necessity to take care of a sick parent or child or spouse, struggling with a disease that one has, an exam that you're going through right now. One of the myriad social justice issues we have in this society. Just a conflict you're in with, again, a person close to you, a parent, a friend, a spouse. Your own mental health, or just patterns, psychological patterns you have and you can't seem to understand or shake or know what to do with it, anxiety, depression, anger, shame, all of that. When you go and you make a list, like what else? What else am I concerned about? You make a list. It can be really long. Usually you don't take the time. I sometimes take the time. I sit down and I list everything that comes to mind. What else? What else? What else? So, this isn't sitting Zazen, right? But Zazen actually comes into it. Let me explain that quickly. When we sit Zazen, today I'm not going to go into what it means to sit Zazen and instruction. I just assume you know what you do. When you sit Zazen, generally speaking, you don't do something like this. You don't analyze, but you even don't name. You just allow the mind, something comes up, you don't engage it much, you let it go, you let something else come up, so forth. That's the practice. But here I'm suggesting, and maybe you don't do that when you formally sit down in the Zazen, just sit in a chair. I suggest that you name it, because there's something here. When you sit Zazen, all of this is present. You're present with your aliveness, and you're present with all of your concerns at the same time. And some of them might come as, a story or a worry or a flicker of this thought, a flicker of that thought. That's how your concerns show themselves. But you don't engage them much. But here I'm saying, if you suffer from overwhelm or not knowing how to reckon with everything that's going on in your life, why not name it? Just acknowledge what is. No judgment. Not if it's a small concern, it can make it on the list. If it's a big concern, like species extinction, it can make it on the list. You see, you're just meeting all of that as it is. It's a practice I call acknowledging what is. There's something powerful here. Why? Life is very contradictory. That's something to get used to. Very contradictory. You cannot figure it out. While we feel powerless vis-a-vis a certain kind of issue, that could be the war, but it could also just be our own psychology. You just feel powerless. I don't know what to do. while you feel powerless, at the same time you can feel powerful in your capacity to hold all these issues. They are your life. This is what it means to be alive in this body at this time, in this place. And when you make the list, it's sort of like, this all belongs to me. This all is relevant. This all needs attention. And while not trying to act, there can be this power of like, I can hold this. The feeling is, it's like you are bigger than any of those issues. You're bigger than all of these issues together. Is this true? Like, that's easy for me to say because I say, and I'll talk about this a little bit more before I close, it's like we are both very large and very small at the same time. This is something to get used to. How are you very large? There's actually a number of ways, but let me just say something. One thing here. When you ask yourself how one of these issues on your list actually manifests, concretely, right now, it manifests as a certain kind of sensation in your body. Jitteriness, nervousness, a knot in your stomach, a weight on your heart, etc. It's manifesting like this. And it manifests as thought. Thoughts you have about that issue. And this is completely okay. That's just the way it is. And at the same time, when you open your eyes, or when you do this grounding practice, you realize that you are larger than those manifestations of sensation and thought. In your thinking mind, seeing this floor and feeling its capacity to ground yourself may be smaller than the killing that's happening in your crane. But in actual fact, it is larger. You understand? It's larger because it has the capacity to ground you in the midst of the feelings and thoughts that you're having about it, about the war. Even if you were there, I imagine, even if we were there, if we were in Ukraine right now, afraid of missiles, we could still use the ground. We probably would have to. We could still use the breath, and we would probably want to. Zazen is helping us to feel that largeness of the self. I've quoted this a lot. Zenki Roshi says, what is more real to you? You or your concern? Or turn it around. Your concern or you? He says, your problem or you yourself? This is important. The answer should be, I say this with caution, the answer should be, you yourself should be larger than your concern. But that's not always the case. We do get contracted around our concerns. maybe one in particular, maybe two in particular. Okay. So this isn't about judging the fact that we get contracted around it. It's like it's just noticing that this is the case, and you want to investigate whether this is a state of mind that you want to continue in. So when you sit down for Zazen, there's this ability, there's this capacity to become large. Now, this is not unrelated to what I said about the role of the monk, because this mind that is large is like a mind outside of the affairs of the world. We could use it to ignore or bypass the affairs of the world or our concerns and pretend that they're not important because we're larger than them. But this is only half of our life. This is only half of our life. If you know this posture, it's very helpful, but it's only half of your life. This is why this is such a conundrum. How can you be a quietist and an activist at the same time? So I find, I'll make it again personal, but as an illustration, I find when I have made this list, now what? There's what else, what else, what else? And then there's now what? I live all of these concerns always at the same time. And yet, in my actions, I need to be willing to concentrate on one or two or three. And there's a decision to be made. What is it that can come into the focus of my action right now? And so some of these concerns have to fall by the wayside, sort of. Or a little bit. Or they have to remain unattended for a while. I'm trying to speak about here a way that we can be large and small at the same time. All of these concerns can be acknowledged, and they can all be given equal weight, and they can be all accepted and at the same time, I realize that I'm this small being in a large world, and that my actions not only are limited in the way of what I can do at one time, but also in their efficacy. It's like I can only do so much. But I can feel deeply about everything. And in some ways, the way we take care of everything is by practicing right intention. Now, I hope this doesn't sound too abstract. It's like in relationship to this war, I know when I resonate with the images, with the stories that are coming to me about it, with my own resonances that go back into my family history and just my ability to feel the suffering of others. I can know through my practice, I can know that the killing must stop. As soon as possible. That's the most important thing. Because if it doesn't stop, the karma of hatred will be cemented more and more deeply in each human being involved in this conflict. And that's actually all of us, because right now these views are forming about what's right and wrong, that side-taking is happening. And this side-taking will continue, the effects of this side-taking will continue for a long time. And the more suffering is invested in the side-taking, the more entrenched the side-taking will be. So in ourselves, we can start to feel this, even if we can't do something right away, in ourselves we can feel this dimension. And we can support those actions in the world taken by others or on our behalf that support this intention. And through this practice of right intention, clarifying what really matters, we can actually stay engaged with our long list. One small action at the time, coming from, if we can bring our practice to that, coming from a large, what is that? A large awareness. A large heart, in the sense that that awareness is a large heart, meaning our willingness and our capacity and willingness to resonate with everything that is coming to us. Thank you very much.